my name is Christie, and I'd like you to take the camera off me and put it on the audience, because I'd like to ask all of you, how many of you, raise your hand, believe that in today's Barack Obama America, your children will have a better life than you've had? You see, that's why I'm running for president, because leadership is not about me, it's about our country. And what we talk about tonight is not about us, it's about the people in the audience tonight. Because in 7 short years, this president has stripped away their trust and their faith and their belief that the next generation will have a better life. He's stolen that from us, and when I'm president, I'm going to take it back.
Dr. Carson said campaigning is easier for him because he's not a politician. He can just tell the truth, therefore, while politicians, quote, have their finger in the air to see and do what is politically expedient. Governor Christie, tell Dr. Carson, is that a fair description of you?
Well, I know Ben doesn't think that about me. I'm sure he was talking about one of the other guys, not me. And as far as being an outsider is concerned, let me tell you this, Jake. I am a Republican in New Jersey. I wake up every morning as an outsider. I wake up every morning with a Democratic legislature who's trying to beat my head in and fight me because I'm trying to bring conservative change to a state that needed it desperately. And so everyone can talk up here about their credentials, but the bottom line is every morning I get up, I vetoed 400 bills from a crazy liberal Democratic legislature. Not one of them has been overridden. I vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history, according to Americans for Tax Reform. What folks want in this country is somebody to go down there and get the job done. And that's exactly what I'll do. So I know this much, that what American people want to hire right now is somebody who believes in them and believes that they are the ones who can fix our country. I will be the vessel through which they can fix this country. But it's not about me. It's about all of you and getting this government off your back and out of your way and letting you succeed. So I know that Ben wasn't talking about me. Look at him smiling at me right now. I know Ben didn't mean it about me.
Thank you, Governor Christie.
One of these other guys, I'm sure.
Dr. Carson, who were you thinking?
We didn't surrender in New Jersey 6 years ago as the brand new first ever pro-life governor of New Jersey since Roe versus Wade. I defunded Planned Parenthood, and I've vetoed Planned Parenthood funding now 8 times in New Jersey. Since the day I walked in as governor, Planned Parenthood has not been funded in New Jersey. We've stood up, and every one of those vetoes has been sustained. But here's the problem. We're fighting with each other up here. We agree. Let's ask Hillary Clinton. She believes in the systematic murder of children in the womb to preserve their body parts data in a way that maximizes their value for sale for profit. It is disgusting, and the American people need to hear it. We shouldn't be fighting with each other. She's the real opponent. She's the real problem.
Governor, the reality is in just 2 weeks' time, we are going to be facing a question about whether or not it's enough to shut down the government to make that statement because there's still a Democrat in the White House. Do you oppose it or support it?
I'll tell you what I'd be willing to fight for. Why haven't we put tax reform on the president's desk so we can simplify this tax system?
Yes or no,
it's really important, Dana. We got to talk about what we would be willing to shut down for. Why don't we put tax reform on this president's desk and make him veto it if that's what he wants to do? Why haven't we repealed and replaced Obamacare? Make him veto if that's what he wants to do. And why don't we do the same thing with Planned Parenthood? We elected a Republican Congress to do this, and they should be doing it, and they're not, and they're giving the president a pass.
Dana, I'd like one more time. I'm sorry, I just want to get an answer.
I put it in the list, Dana.
Okay.
We should be doing these things and forcing the president to take action.
So
let's force him to do what he says he's going to do.
Dana,
now, I don't know whether he'll do it or not, but let's force him to do it.
Dana, I'd like to...
You and I have talked about this in an interview. You say that his big wall, his plan to deport 11 to 12 million undocumented immigrants, it sounds great, but it's never going to happen. Tell him why you're skeptical of his plans.
Well, first off, Jake, I don't yield to anybody on how to enforce the law. I'm the only person on the stage who spent 7 years as the United States Attorney after September 11th. And I know how to do this. The fact is, though, that for 15,000 people a day to be deported every day for 2 years is an undertaking that almost none of us could accomplish given the current levels of funding and the current number of law enforcement officers. But here's what we need to do, and I think this is where Donald is absolutely right. What we need to do is to secure our border, and we need to do it with more than just a wall. We need to use electronics, we need to use drones, we need to use FBI, DA, and ATF, and yes, we need to take the fingerprint of every person who comes into this country on a visa, and when they overstay their visa, we need to tap them on the shoulder and say, you have overstayed your welcome. You are taking advantage of the American people. It's time for you to go. If we had that kind of system in place, we wouldn't have the 11 million people we have now.
Thank you, Governor Christie.
By the way, I agree. Jake, listen, while I'm as entertained as anyone by this personal back and forth about the history of Donald and Carly's career, for the 55-year-old construction worker out in that audience tonight who doesn't have a job, who can't fund his child's education, I got to tell you the truth. They could care less about your careers. They care about theirs. Let's start talking about that on this stage, and stop playing the games.
Governor Christie,
John, I'm not done yet, John.
A track record of leadership is not a game. It is the issue in this election.
Carly, listen, you can interrupt everybody else on the stage, you can't interrupt me. Okay? The fact is that we don't want to hear about your careers, back and forth and volleying back and forth about who did well and who did poorly. You're both successful people. Congratulations. You know who's not successful? The middle class in this country who's getting plowed over by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Let's start talking about the O's issues tonight and stop this childish back and forth between the two of you.
Ms. Fiorina, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Listen, Hugh, it's an important point. And the question is, who's going to prosecute Hillary Clinton? The Obama White House seems to have no interest. The Justice Department seems to have no interest. I think it's time to put a former federal prosecutor on the same stage with Hillary Clinton, and I will prosecute her during those debates on that stage for the record that we're talking about here. The fact that she had a private email server in her basement using national security secrets running through it could have been hacked by the Russians, the Chinese, or two 18-year-olds on a tube wanting to have some fun. No one's answering that question from the Hillary Clinton camp. You know why? Because she knows she's wrong, and she cannot look in the mirror at herself, and she cannot tell the American people the truth.
Thank you, Governor Christie. There is, Governor Christie, we just marked the 14th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Now, Dr. Carson has said that if he had been president at the time, the United States would not have gone to war in Afghanistan. What does that say to you about how Dr. Carson would respond as president if America were attacked again?
Well, Jake, I was named U.S. Attorney by President Bush on September 10th, 2001. And that next day, my wife, Mary Pat, did what she did every day. She traveled through the World Trade Center and went to her office 2 blocks from the World Trade Center. And after those planes hit for 5.5 hours, after that, I couldn't reach her, didn't know whether she was dead or alive, and we had 3 children at that time, 8, 5, and 1. And I had to confront what so many thousands of others in my region had to confront. The idea that I might become a single parent, the idea that my life and my children's life might be changed forever. We lost friends that day. We went to the funerals. And I will tell you that what those people wanted and what they deserved was for America to answer back against what had been done to them. And I support what President Bush did at that time, going into Afghanistan, hunting al-Qaeda and its leaders, getting its sanctuary out of place, and making it as difficult around the world for them to move people and money. And then he went to prosecutors like us, and he said, never again. Don't prosecute these people after the crime is committed. Intervene before the crime happens. I absolutely believe that what the president did at the time was right, and I am proud to have been one of the people on the stage who was part of making sure that what Governor Bush said before was the truth. America was safe for those 7 years, and Barack Obama has taken that safety away from us.
Dr. Carson.
While that may have been a fine idea that Dr. Carson had, these people were out to kill us. I stood in that region with my family, and every time a plane went overhead in the weeks after that, people's heads jerked to the sky because they thought it was happening again. You do not need to go through subtle diplomacy at that point. That can be handled later on. What you need is a strong American leader who will take the steps that are necessary to protect our nation. That's what I would do as commander-in-chief in this circumstance, and that's what President George W. Bush did in 2001.
Dr. Carson?
You brought my issue up.
That's true. Go ahead, Christie, please.
I enjoyed the interplay. Thank you, gentlemen. I just say this. First off, New Jersey is the first state in the nation that now says if you are a nonviolent, non-dealing drug user, that you don't go to jail for your first offense. You go to mandatory treatment. You see, as Jake, I'm pro-life. And I think you need to be pro-life for more than just the time in the womb. It gets a lot tougher when they get out of the womb. And when they're the 16-year-old drug addict on the floor of the county lockup, that life is just as precious as the life in the womb. And so that's why I'm for rehabilitation, why I think the war on drugs has been a failure. But I'll end with this. That doesn't mean we should be legalizing gateway drugs. And if Senator Paul thinks that the only victim is the person, look at the decrease in productivity. Look at the way people get used and move on to other drugs when they use marijuana as a gateway drug. It's not them that are the only victims. Their families are the victims too. Their children are the victims too. And their employers are the victims also. And that's why I'll enforce the federal law, while you can still put an emphasis on rehabilitation, which we've done in New Jersey.
Yeah, you may respond, and then I'll bring in you, Ms. Fiorina.
Understand their kid.
And Senator Paul knows that that's simply not the truth. In New Jersey, we have medical marijuana laws, which I've supported and implemented. This is not medical marijuana. This goes a much further step beyond. This is recreational use of marijuana. This is much different. And so while he'd like to use a sympathetic story to back up his point, it doesn't work. I'm not against medical marijuana. We do it in New Jersey, but I am against the recreational use of marijuana. If he wants to change the federal law, get Congress to pass the law to change it and get a president to sign it.
May I respond?
Yes, Senator Paul.
Here's the thing: is he doesn't want to make it about.
Get the Social Security system solvent again, like that?
No, it's not. But when Donald did it, it's a good start. That's really good. No, listen. This is an issue that we've got to talk about, and we haven't talked about yet. 71% of all federal spending is on entitlements and debt service. When John Kennedy was elected president in 1960, it was 26%. Harvard and Dartmouth says that Social Security is going to go insolvent in 7 to 8 years. So what I say is very simple. We need to save this program for the good people out there who have paid into the system and need it. And if that means making sure that folks like Donald and many of us on this stage don't get it, that's the right thing to do. Because here's what Hillary Clinton's going to want to do. She's going to want to put more money into a system that has already lied to us and stolen from us. This government doesn't need more money to make Social Security solvent. We need to be not paying out benefits to people who don't really need it. We need to protect the people who Social Security means the difference between picking between heat and rent and food. That's why I put out the proposal, and that's the people I'm trying to protect.
Governor Christie's right about Social Security.
Thank you, Governor. I'm coming to you right now on a separate issue, sir. We've received a lot of that climate change is real and that humans help contribute to it, without getting into the issue of China versus the United States, which I understand you've talked about before. What do you make of skeptics of climate change, such as Senator Rubio?
I don't think Senator Rubio is a skeptic of climate change. I think what Senator Rubio said, I agree with. That, in fact, we don't need this massive government intervention to deal with the problem. Look at what we've done in New Jersey. We've already reached our clean air goals for 2020, and when I was governor, I pulled out of the regional cap and trade deal, the only state in the Northeast that did that. And we still reached our goals. Why? Because 53% of our electricity comes from nuclear. We use natural gas. We use solar power. We're the third highest using solar power state. You know why? Because we made all of those things economically feasible. I agree with Marco. We shouldn't be destroying our economy in order to chase some wild left-wing idea that somehow us by ourselves is going to fix the climate. We can contribute to that and be economically sound. We've proven that we could do that in New Jersey. Nuclear needs to be back on the table in a significant way in this country if we want to go after this problem.
Just for the record, I was citing Secretary of State George Shultz, Ronald Reagan Secretary of State, who I don't think anybody would call him left-wing.
No, listen, everybody makes a mistake every once in a while, Jake, even George Shultz. And if that's truly a representation of what he believes we should be doing, then with all due respect to the former Secretary of State, I disagree with him.
Jake, you mentioned me and called me a denier. Let me say, climate change.
Governor Christie.
I think the Adams family has been shorted in the currency business. Our country wouldn't be here without John Adams, and he would not have been able to do it without Abigail Adams. So I put Abigail Adams on the bill.
All right. Some good entries. Start with you. Your Secret Service code name to be.
You know, I've been called a lot of names by a lot of different people. Now I got to get called by names by the Secret Service. I would just say True Heart.
Well, I have one.